Hi all, welcome to sunny Melbourne on this fine Saturday. Welcome to my latest edition of Bob's Vlog. This week we've got a real treat, or I think it's a real treat, where we've got an interview with the larger-than-life OzTrucker. If, like me, you're on social media, especially on Twitter, you would have followed Mike Williams, the OzTrucker, over the years. He's a larger-than-life character. He calls it as he sees it. So when you watch this interview, just be ready for some language that comes through. We don't edit, we don't cut, we don't restrain. We just call it as we see it, which I love, and I love this about Mike. It gave me a laugh. Hopefully he'll give you a laugh. But we talk about, obviously, some serious subjects. And what serious subjects we have in this grand country we call Australia, especially in my hometown of Melbourne. What a fortnight it's been from the CFMEU riots for the last 2 weeks of protest, and up until yesterday where Dan's basically said get the jab or don't have a job. We are now into a dystopian future that none of us could have predicted 2 years ago, and it's something I believe even those of you out there that are in the minority feel you're in the minority. I certainly feel that way. We've got to keep trying to fight and get our way of life back. Not this new normal. We don't want new normal. We want to reject it. And the only way we can do that is by coming together and keep talking. Keep talking, keep lobbying, keep fighting. There'll be more news coming out from my end in regards to how you can do that. Don't underestimate the impact you can have. I notice a lot of people on Twitter are saying, you know, they're a lone voice in their families and their friends and their groups. Eventually, I'm confident that we'll turn them around. All right, it doesn't seem that way at the moment, but all you can do is talk in a calm manner, put forward the best arguments, and if you believe in what you're saying, those arguments will win the day. It might take us a lot longer than we think, but they will win the day, and we have to win the day. We have to get Dan Andrews out. We've got Gladys gone. Every single political leader, I don't care whether they're Liberal or Labor, around this country at the moment has let us down. They need to go. And we need to keep fighting until they go, and we need to get our, well, like I said, our way of life back. So listen, I hope you enjoy this interview with Mike. Like I said, he's a character. Hopefully I get more with him. On a final note, the audio on here, especially at Mike's end, wasn't great when we recorded it. It sounded fine, but then once we downloaded the recording, his audio didn't come up well. So I apologise for that. Just turn up the volume, forgive my voice, and listen to what Mike's got to say. And hopefully we get more interviews with him and others going forward. Again, there'll be some more news out about that. We've interlaced this with a few clips. Shout out to Rurik Shan, who we downloaded a few of his videos off. If you've never watched Rurik Shan, at Rurik Shan on Twitter, or just follow him on Facebook. So it's all one word or two words. So Real, R-E-A-L, and then Rukshan, which is R-U-K-S-H-A-N. He live streams all these protests. If you want to see what's really true, as opposed to the propaganda you get on mainstream media, follow the live streamers out there. There's plenty of them. We'll try and link to his Facebook page in the comments section below when I publish this. Okay? Enjoy the interview, everybody. I'll look forward to seeing you on the other side. Bye.
For our help in Melbourne live now.
I know children raising a son of 13-year-olds.
I'm not sure.
Injured by the unprovoked police violence on Melbourne street.
With
We are a proud liberal democracy. We believe in a world order that favours freedom and that supports the dignity and free expression of all people. We believe in human rights, in gender equality and the rule of law, and we back that up with how we pursue these things in our own country, in our own society, and how we raise our own children. Australia was one of 8 countries only involved in the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and we continue to strengthen the international human rights system. And we will continue to raise our voice on important issues like the rights of women and girls, the rights of Indigenous peoples, because respecting the rights and freedoms of the individual is intrinsically important. It is fundamental to our values as a people and as a nation. It lifts all societies and nations too, delivering better outcomes through economic inclusion. So if you get vaccinated, there will be special rules that apply to you. Women's empowerment, environmental sustainability, rising living standards, and so much more. Australians' actions are guided by our belief in the inherent dignity of all people, everywhere, no matter the circumstances. Mr. President, we learned through the pandemic that every moment of challenge requires us to think anew, to engage with each other, to learn as you go. It is an experience understood by many others. And so we will continue to meet this moment with dialogue. Thank you, Mr. President.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, how are you?
You can hear me all right?
I can hear you. I can hear you quite well. Thank you.
Okay, we got you a bit lower. I think we're live. There you go. You're perfect timing.
I think we are.
Yep, we're up and about. How are you, mate?
I'm all right. How are you?
No, very, very good. Welcome, everyone, to our interview with the larger-than-life Mike Williams. I think if, like me, you've followed Mike on Twitter over the years, you'd understand he's a larger-than-life character that calls it as he sees it, which I love, being an ex-country lad. So that's one good thing about the truckers. You know, when they've got an opinion, they'll express it, and they'll express it in a really good fashion. So something this country needs a bit more. Sorry, Mike, first time we're trying this live stuff, so it's either going to be a total victory or a total disaster.
Yeah, well, we'll see how we go.
Yeah, it'd be a bit of fun. If you're going to fail hard, I say. You might as well have a crack. So we'll see how it works. So, mate, what's the weather like over there in WA?
Well, it's been raining. It's been pretty ordinary over here today. We've had some thunderstorms. The dogs are hiding. It's not been pretty over here today.
Oh, well, that's good. In the great state of Victoria, we can enjoy the wonderful weather, clear blue skies, all from our living rooms. So
I can actually go out my front door without a mask on, go to the shop, go to the movies.
He's rubbing it in again.
We could go to
oh my God.
We could. What else could we do? I can go to work. Yeah, just gotta love it, don't you?
Oh,
what are we going to do? What are we going to try and get banned off several social media platforms in one afternoon? Are we, Bob? Is that the plan?
Oh, well, I've already managed one in the past week, twice off Twitter and the thing. So there's a very big chance, I think, mate. I've had 2 YouTube videos taken down. Isn't it amazing? One of the things about the internet when it first came in was supposed to be sharing this information, opinion, and all this sort of thing. Yeah. And it was supposed to be the greatest invention, and it arguably is. But the censorship that's going on simply because you have a different opinion. Yep. And, mate, no offense, but, you know, compared to some of the greater minds in the world, I mean, your and my opinions are important. Everyone's opinion is important, but it's not like we're going to change the planet. And to be censoring my voice, like they have, I find incredibly bizarre. Well,
no one's mind gets changed on social media. We both know that.
Yeah.
You know what? Look, to be perfectly frank with you, I'm amazed that I haven't been barred off Twitter. I've said some pretty controversial things. I mean, I never held back when I was doing a minute with Mick.
Yeah.
Although I did get advised by some close friends that I probably should tone it down a little bit, and because I don't know, we're allowed to swear, are we, Bob?
Mate, you can do whatever you like. That's why I've got you on here.
You can only say fuck so many times. It starts to lose its effect after a while, and you've seen me. I've actually given politicians from all stripes a couple of barrels from time to time.
Yep.
And it's quite amusing. I've had phone calls from people who said to me, "Geez, I wish you hadn't said that," and there are people that said, "Well, gee, I'm glad you did." And it's particularly amusing to me sometimes when some of these people are sitting members of parliament. They ring me up and say, "I enjoyed that. Well done."
Well, that's because they're not allowed to say whatever they want. I mean, it's interesting. I've actually joined the Liberal Democrats in the past fortnight, and for me, that's a big step. For my entire 58 years, I haven't been politically motivated. I'm just as happy to get out of bed, go to work, and enjoy my life that I used to enjoy in Australia. And but this has got me so motivated now that I've joined in. But they started on there the other day. If you're going to be a candidate, you got to have talking points. You got to be statesmanlike. You got to do all this. And I'm listening to all that and thinking, oh God, I don't know whether I could handle this candidacy thing, because you have to be restrained. So the same thing, which I think is sad. I think one of the beauties, for example, about Donald Trump is what you saw is what you got. And I thought a lot of people, that's why he got elected. It resonated. It wasn't this sterile, controlled sort of personality. So I think there should be more of it in the public discourse. I think you should be able to say what you want to say. And people need to start growing a pair a little bit, So we seem to have lost that in Australia. I find the whole thing of the last 2 years, if you had told me this 3 years ago that Australia would have ended up being so compliant with these restrictions, I could never have picked this. That's the thing that amazes me, that so many people they seem to be embracing these restrictions and these, especially here in Melbourne. There is obviously the protest, and I think they're growing. But it's interesting, the other day they accused all those tradies of being Nazis. The word I use for a lot of these pro-vaccine people, not all of them, but there's certainly a significant, I'd say, minority of them, is the vaccine Nazis. It's not the protesters that want to lock people down, that want to see your passes, that want to create two classes of citizenship, that want to stop people from going from 10K to 5K to 15. We're not the ones who want to shut down kids' playgrounds or sport or schools, and yet it's us being called the Nazis. So
here's the thing, though, Bob. The thing that you're not getting. I made some notes. Look.
Yep.
Because I thought, well, I'm getting professional. I've got to have some talking points now. So have a few flashcards. But I mean, these are things that resonate with me. I mean, 2 years ago when all this started. But by the way, I should have said this right at the start. Welcome to the second year of 14 days to flatten the curve, mate.
Oh, yeah.
I have put up on social media right from the start how I felt about all of this stuff.
Yep.
And I could look. I could just sit here now, and our total conversation could be, "Well, I told you so."
Yep.
And that'd be it. In
Well,
March,
that's one of the reasons I got shot, mate.
In March 2020, I said masks were a waste of time.
Yep.
In March 2020, I said that, and then at the time, they said, "Oh no, everyone's got to wear masks." Then we went through masks are a great thing. Then masks weren't a great thing, and now again, masks are a great thing. It says it right on the box, and I wish I had the picture here to show you. On the side of the box where it says that these masks don't protect against COVID-19. Now we've got designer masks. So I think I put a thing up there the other day. Let me just see if I can dig it out so I can quote myself accurately. But I said that here we go. I got
Not be able to share that, mate, if you want to.
Well, it's sort of here. I've got it on my
Okay,
page.
yep.
But I put this up on Facebook because sometimes a couple of hundred characters on Twitter just isn't enough.
No.
So I said, dear vaccinated, the unvaccinated haven't taken away your freedoms. The government has.
Yeah.
Right? The unvaccinated are not holding your freedoms to ransom. The government is.
Yep.
If the unvaccinated are a danger to you, then your vaccination doesn't work. I mean, this is just logic.
Yeah.
Straight
Common sense.
line
Yep.
observation. The vaccination did work, then we'd all be free.
Yep.
Right? And I said, what's my role? Remember they said 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Well, we did that. We've gone along with the border closures. We've gone along with the lockdowns. We were told that when the vaccination was rolled out, we'd all be free. Remember this?
Yep.
Politicians saying when there's a vaccination available, people will be able to have it. We'll all be free. Masks were a waste of time. Then they weren't. Then they are, and they weren't again. And now we've got designer masks. If you've got, I've got one here somewhere that I have to wear on a plane. You wear this bloody thing through the airport, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
With a face nappy. It's made out of cloth.
Yep.
Look, admittedly, if you sneeze in it, it'll give you a nice wet patch on the front. Not a problem.
Yep.
So you social distance all the way through the airport, and you get onto a plane and sit. And I'm a big bloke, shoulder to shoulder. I actually take up a seat in a bit.
Yep.
I hate to give Virgin an ad, but they've got the best seats. I know. I'm flying on them every couple of weeks now. You sit down, and you got your mask on like this, and we're just sitting here, and everything's good. And then they bring me a cup of coffee, and I can go, oh, beautiful. And it's not a problem.
Yep. We had.
I can't. The logic of it just blows me away, right? And then we go. They've said that they needed 2 weeks to sort the healthcare system out. I used to work in the healthcare system.
Yeah.
It blows people away. I'm just a truck driver, and I just do a trucking podcast and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. A lot of people don't realise that I actually have a degree in nursing.
Okay.
At University at Warrnambool.
There you go.
Righto. 3 years at university, I became a registered nurse, a Division 1 registered nurse in the state of Victoria. Then I did a staff year at Portland District Hospital. This is my resume, right?
Yep.
Did a staff year at Portland District Hospital where I rotated through the emergency department, a medical surgical ward with the midwifery unit attached to it, and an operating theatre. And by the time I'd done that rotation on my graduate year, I decided that I wanted to be an operating theatre nurse.
Yep.
So I went to Melbourne and I enrolled at Deakin University at Burwood, and I did a postgraduate diploma in perioperative nursing.
Yep.
And I did my clinical component of that course at Cabrini Hospital. Worked there for a couple of years at Cabrini in Malvern.
Yeah.
It's the best Catholic hospital that Jewish money can buy.
Yep.
Now, I worked there for a while, and I became a clinical nurse specialist there, which means I was fully qualified in the area, and I was doing all that sort of work. So in the course of all that, I did learn a little bit about viruses and management of sterile conditions and PPE and masks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I know a little bit about all that. So when I'm commenting on this stuff, I'm commenting on things that I learned as a practicing clinician. I was a registered nurse working in the healthcare centre at Yarrabah Clinic in far north Queensland, doing remdesivir injections in the Aboriginal community at Yarrabah in 2009. I was actually there. I was there for that. So I've had the experience of being on the front line when this is happening. You know what we knew then about swine flu? Fuck all. Right? You know what Queensland Health were telling us about swine flu at the time?
Yeah.
Fuck all. Righto? And I can tell you now, I've got friends of mine that are still working in healthcare, and you know what they know about this virus that we've got now?
Let me guess. Fuck all.
Fuck all.
That's the scary part. I went to my GP the other week, and mate, there's no way at this stage I will be taking the jab. I've done, I don't have your qualifications, but I've done just through my work I'm doing now, a fair bit of research. I'm writing up an article. So, on two things, you continue lectured to follow the science.
Yep.
So no doubt you've probably done the same thing where you get on, and the one thing I do not trust is my politicians or these chief health officers. So I did what they said, and I've got online and I've looked up the science and tried to get some really qualified people. And lo and behold, if you've done that, you find a lot of people that are speaking out against these vaccines, that are saying similar things to you, or speaking out against COVID or mask wearing, all that sort of thing. But you can't follow them because they're not saying the narrative that the government wants to hear. So straight away, common sense tells you, hold on. And this is where I think you get this, they're saying it's 20%. I think the hesitancy group is a lot bigger than what they're letting on. Otherwise, why are they pushing so hard still for everyone to get the jab? I've never seen anything like it. But so you get on there, you look at that science, and that starts to make you think. So then you start reading about scientists who back things like ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. So you start naturally developing questions in your head. And you start learning about like antibody something enhancement or whatever it is that the vaccines produce to basically overwhelm your immune system. So you're naturally going, I'm not too sure I want to get this. And so, then you get Andrews coming in and saying, well, don't listen to me. Go to your GP. Listen to your doctor. So I go to my GP and I ask her, listen, I'd like to get some information about ivermectin before I make any decision on which way I want to go forward.
Yep.
Her answer to me was, we're not going to provide you any information with ivermectin. This clinic is only interested in the vaccines, and that's what we do. So if you want to get some vaccine, I will certainly encourage that because I'm type 2 diabetic. You're in the high risk category, and we just deal with vaccines. And I said to her, don't you have an obligation as my GP to research this and give me some information about what could be my preferred course of treatment?
Yep. If
I want to go down that way, I might go down and say, bugger it, I'll take nothing. I've never had a flu injection, to be honest, and I barely ever get the flu. So I found it incredible that until I read recently about the pressure that APRA is putting on all health workers, not just doctors, registered nurses, paramedics. Yep.
I've got an interesting letter here, Bob.
Yep.
It was written by a bloke named Peter Johnson. He's a MBBS, which means he's done a medical degree.
Yeah.
He's a fellow of the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners,
which
is the professional body for general practitioners, much like I was a member of the Royal College of Nurses Australia. He's a member of the, as a fellow of the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners. I've got a 7-page letter here, which I shared on social media. This copy of this came into my possession. This is his letter to APRA at the National Board, written on the September the 12th of this year, where someone made a complaint about him in his room, or to APRA, about some things that were said in his rooms.
I saw that. Yeah.
The person that made the complaint wasn't even his patient. It was the patient.
It was the boyfriend, wasn't it?
I'm not sure. It was someone who wasn't a member. He wasn't actually treating the person that made the complaint anyway.
Yeah.
But beside the point, people are allowed to complain. I've got no issue with people complaining.
Yeah.
What I do have an issue with is rank stupidity. Now, from my own experience, I was on a page and I made some comments, and someone said, what would you know? You're just a dumb truck driver. And I've got a screenshot of my registration from Victoria.
Yeah.
I said, I know, fuck all. And I posted that up on the screen. And then someone else that's in the conversation says to me, if you're a registered nurse, you really shouldn't be saying this. APRA will be after you and all the rest of it. And I said, I don't care about APRA anymore. I'm no longer a registered nurse. And I'm not a registered nurse, just to clarify here, I'm not a registered nurse because I did anything wrong.
Yeah.
It's not, I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't done for malpractice. I didn't mistreat anyone or abuse anyone or, God forbid, sexually abuse an aged care.
Oh, shit.
I didn't do any of that, right? What I did was I got psoriasis, right? And they wouldn't let me scrub anymore. I was a scrub nurse in an operating theatre. They wouldn't let me scrub anymore. So I had to stop.
Yeah.
And I ended up in administration. And I ended up managing an operating theatre.
Yeah.
And I ended up dealing with the health bureaucracy. And
oh, God, no wonder you quit.
I wanted my fucking hands like this, Bob, I could choke
Yeah.
people. You know,
Yeah.
I couldn't say no when I meant yes, and I couldn't say yes when I meant no.
Oh, dear head in.
I couldn't function anymore in the environment. In the finish,
Yep.
I just basically threw my hands in the air and said, I've had enough. I'm leaving. I've finished. I'm going. All right.
Yeah.
And so I did. And do I miss nursing? Yeah, I do. I was bloody good at it.
Yeah.
Do I miss working in an operating theatre? Yes, I do. I was bloody good at it. I've worked with a lot of surgeons down in Melbourne who were very, very good at their profession. I was on part of the team in the mid '90s that put in the intra-aortic stent grafts with Professor Peter Milne, the vascular surgeon in Melbourne.
Right. Yeah.
I helped insert. We put in the first 3 of those. And I was part of that team.
Yeah.
I've worked with guys in the Melbourne Orthopaedic Group. Working on bones and things like that. I've seen a few things,
Yeah.
And people say, well, we need 14 days to flatten the curve so that the hospitals can be fixed. The hospitals, needed time to get sorted out. Mate, I can tell you now from what I've seen with my own bloody eyes,
Yeah.
the hospitals, but the public hospital system in particular, but hospitals in general, have been stuffed for a long time. They don't fund everything. They can't fund everything. And to be frank, we don't need to fund everything.
Yeah.
What we do need to do is we've had great preventative health care. Now, I saw on the news just this morning the heart health check program that was being run is set to be cancelled, right? Because get this, they've had 27,000 missed appointments. 27,000 missed appointments in the heart health check system. Why have we had 27,000 missed appointments? Because people can't go out to go to the doctor to get the health check done because they might have COVID because someone might sneeze in a fucking waiting room. Right? So we've had 27,000 missed appointments. What those 27,000 missed appointments represent is 365 to 374 people whose coronary systems won't be spotted early enough for them to be saved.
Yeah.
Now, that's a reality.
Mate,
they're going to shut that system down because it's not well enough attended. It was under review, but now it's going to be shut down because it was not well enough attended. It's not been well enough attended because of the COVID restrictions, so we're going to shut it down, and that will kill 365 people.
Oh, easy.
Okay?
But
hang on. It gets worse,
sorry.
Bob.
More. There's more.
It gets worse. How many people have died this year in this country from COVID?
That's actually a good question. It wouldn't be many.
It's not many. It's only a couple.
Would it be about 25, 50?
I don't know. Look, I expect you to know the answer to that. I didn't do the research, mate. I only had a certain amount of time to do notes. But the fact of the matter is, it's not 365, is it?
Mate, listen, I'm like you. I mean, I'm not. If you go down too many rabbit burrows here with this, you'll just go insane. To give you a bit of my background, mate, I first started working in the Commonwealth Bank many years ago, and then because you could never make enough of a dollar in the Commonwealth Bank, I went over into IT when I came down to Melbourne. That was good money, really good money, and I didn't mind the work. But a bit like you with the health bureaucrats, the people I was working with just did my head in. Talk about nerds. I just couldn't deal with them. Every day you're going in and dealing with. My biggest passion in life has been sport. I've been playing sport or coaching it now for years. And at that time, I'd gone from playing AFL footy into coaching basketball. And that was when Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, all these guys were coming in, and no kids had anybody to coach them. And just through one thing or another, I ended up coaching kids in a sport I'd never actually played much as a junior, but that took over my life. So that was what I was passionate about. So I come from a real sporting background, and in the sports background, just like with the truckers, and I played with a few truckies. When you play any sport, you're dealing with a diverse group of people, from surgeons to police officers to nurses to Indigenous to Muslims to Jews to Christians to atheists, the whole lot. And you get a real good grounding, and you just start to develop a common sense. A bit like, this is what I admire about truckies a lot. And you just know with your gut, and I was a bit like you. I didn't quite come out when you did, but it wasn't long after that. And when they first come out and said, listen, we need 2 weeks to flatten the curve and we've got to get our hospital thing ready, I thought, oh, okay, 2 weeks. I was like everyone else. I said, we can handle it for 2 weeks. And I was lucky I was sort of running my own business. So it wiped my business out pretty much. But, for the sake of the health of the community, let's give it 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever we need. Yeah. But, after we going on 6, 8 weeks, I started thinking a lot of this just doesn't add up. Yeah. And the further it went, the more it doesn't add up. If you go right back when it first came out in Wuhan, people were falling over in the streets, dying. They were melting metal bars to people's doors so they couldn't get out of their rooms, supposedly. Where the hell has that been in Australia? Now, just to put everything into context and just keep it nice and simple, on average a day, 450 people die in Australia.
I've said
over 2 years, on average, it's less than 2 a day die of COVID. Now, go back to 2000, I think it was 17, we had a really bad flu season. More people died that flu season than what have died of COVID.
Yes.
So, why didn't we shut down everything back then? It screams out to me that we're just attacking a health policy with this tyrannical insanity, and especially if you lived in Melbourne. And if you do any research on any of this, for example, the country that never, ever gets brought up, which should be the gold standard, which is Sweden, who's never locked their people down. They did have a high death rate initially because they screwed up in the old people's homes like we did here in Melbourne. But once they got over that hump, they're now zero cases. All the Scandinavian countries are back living life to normal. And all 3 of them this week have declared we're treating COVID like the flu. We're moving on.
Just to clarify your numbers, Bob, I've got the Australian annual influenza death numbers here.
Yep.
In 2016, 273 people died in Australia from the flu, the garden variety flu. In 2017, it was 1,181.
Yep.
In 2018, it was 148. These are just the Australian numbers, not worldwide, obviously.
Worldwide, yep.
2019, it was 902.
Yep.
Right? 2020, it was 36, but we had COVID happening then, so the numbers are a little bit screwed. This year so far, not one person has died from the flu this year so far.
Explain that.
We'll explain that.
Yeah.
Right, now I've got some other numbers here, Bob, because I've prepared and all this shit's properly referenced. And anyone who's listening, I don't know how many people are listening to us now, but if you're listening, all of the stuff I've got here, I'll give you the references for it where you can go and find it. It's all off the Australian healthcare websites. Okay.
Yep.
You need to, and this is the problem, Bob. People they're listening to what's being said on the news.
Yep.
And they don't critically think about what's happening and they don't go and have a look. So,
Great.
like you said, 2018, 158,493 registered deaths in Australia. And this from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. And there's 150,000 per day worldwide. So we account in Australia for 1 day of the world's total deaths in the year. The number 1 killer is cardiovascular disease. The number 2 killer is cancer. And the number 3 killer is respiratory diseases in all forms. About 10,500 people a day. So from the Australian Government Department of Health webpage, in the frequently asked questions section on COVID-19, where it says, what does the PCR test do? The Australian Health Department says, should be noted that the PCR test cannot distinguish between live viruses and infective RNA, right?
Yeah.
And that's all it says. It doesn't say anything else, right? You're supposed to just accept that. Now, the key part of that statement is it can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
Right? So, but then you've got to go off and find out what an infective RNA virus might be. Let me tell you a few infective RNA viruses that the PCR test can't distinguish from COVID, right?
Yep.
Just a few notable ones.
Yeah.
Right. Ebola, SARS, COVID-19, of course. Rabies. We're not likely to get rabies here in Australia. We're not likely to get Ebola. But we are
Yeah.
likely to get common cold.
Yeah.
You know, that's a virus that it can't tell the difference between that and RNA. We can get influenza,
Yep.
hepatitis C, hepatitis E, West Nile virus. We're probably not going to get that here either. Polio and measles.
Yep.
Right. So if you've had an MMR, measles, mumps, and rubella vaccination, you've got antibodies
In your system. Yeah.
to measles.
Well,
Your PCR test might be.
Well, the PCR test was interesting reading on the cycle levels. You know, I mean, it's amazing actually because of all this COVID stuff, things that you never knew before that you start researching a bit. So I found it interesting. I read a few people saying about the cycle. I never knew what the bloody hell it was on a PCR test. But the fact that we're actually testing at 45 when it should be on my reading between 25 and 30. And this is the thing that you watch the news every day, and it's all about cases. We've got 900 cases, 800 cases, whatever. But with the cycle rate so high on the PCR test, like you say, it's going to find things that aren't of a concern that shouldn't be considered a case. So a lot of those 800 cases you're seeing up on the TV, like we got in Melbourne at the moment, maybe 600 of them aren't of that big a concern. Don't need to worry about it. Go home, have a Panadol, get a few days rest. You'll be right. The thing that the media, and this is, I'll tell you, enemy number one is not the politicians, as much as I hate the bastards. Enemy number one of the Australian people is mainstream media. Now, they've been using this as clickbait all the way through for ratings or whatever it is, and pushing a narrative that inspires fear. Now, if people would look a bit harder and just think for a minute, okay, there's 800 cases. How many tests were there? Oh, there's 50,000 tests. Well, that means there was 49,200 tests that there wasn't an issue with. This is not something I should be worried about. You know, but the fear that's getting inspired out there, and I mean, in Melbourne, and this is the hard part for people. You know, you see it, Mike, but there'll be people in West Australia, South Australia, Queensland that don't see it. That life is pretty much still pretty normal. But it stopped being a health crisis in my mind quite a while ago. But if you still think it's a health crisis when we have riot police, assault vehicles, rubber bullets, tear gas, these little canisters that it's like a grenade that blows up and then spreads things. Just read up on what they're using in Melbourne. How the hell is that a health crisis anymore and not a totalitarian crisis? You know, it's the things I'm seeing on my TV, mate. It's like watching a movie. And, you know, I haven't been to any of these protests. I watch them on the live feed and then I try and report on it. Not enough hours in the day. But at some stage I'll probably go. But you could never have told me 2 years ago that we would be seeing this stuff on our streets. Not in Australia.
I said in October last year that Dan had sold our infrastructure to China.
Yeah.
With the Belt and Road and all that sort of stuff. He intends to, I said then he intends to force inject everyone with the vaccination. He's planned a social media credit scheme sort of a thing. And, you know, he's militarized the police force.
Oh, 100% he's done that.
You know, and then of course I've asked, and the other day I asked whereabouts these 4,000 beds that were promised. Well, I can tell you where they went. You've only got to look at what's happening in Victoria.
Yeah.
Bloody militarized police. Those trucks don't come cheap.
No.
You know, and we're hiring.
Those weapons don't come cheap.
Well, we've got AR-15s there. You know, they cost about the same as a ventilator, I suppose. But you know, the reality of it is that you can see the writing on the wall over a period of time. If you sit back and just have a look, if you don't duck your head and think, well, this is not going to happen to me. Yeah. It's not going to happen here. You know, and I hate to use this sort of expressions, but the gassings didn't start on the first day. Right? I mean, and people that don't know what that means, read a fucking history book.
I started. Well, read a history book, or there's a good, if you get onto binge, I watched this as a kid, a series from the 70s, The World at War. And the parallels between what happened and I got abused for this early, but the parallels between what happened in Germany between, say, 1928 and 1933 when Hitler took power, and then 1933 to 1939. I mean, people say, oh, you can't use that. You can't use that. People aren't going to gas chambers and all that. Well, the yellow star label, and I asked the question of the person that had a crack at me about this. I said, when did the yellow stars come in Nazi Germany? I said, because these things build in bit by bit steps, before you get to the real bad stuff. And they couldn't even answer the question. Well, they didn't come in until 1941. You were 2 years into the war. Yeah. They thought that those yellow star identifications came in as soon as Hitler came in. It didn't work that way. No, it was a gradual step by step into that disaster that was the Holocaust. So to say you can't draw comparisons from that period of history, the bigger comparison is I think what people have got to draw from, and there's a lot of people that I speak to, obviously, and I love the video you shared this morning of those first line of responders sharing, how they've worked for 8 years and about to lose their job. So there's a lot of people that are hesitant, that understand like you and I, that something not's quite right here, and they feel demonized, they feel in the minority, and that's an intentional strategy to try and get these people to shut up. Because when Winston Churchill took over, when everyone was against him, he must have felt the world was against him. It took one man to stand strong and say, you know what, we're not going off into the night. We're not going to surrender. And then he rallied more people and they got behind him. And in the end, he turned the whole tide of that war. Where it could have been easy for Churchill to convince a lot of his other ministers of cabinet and say, this is too hard. We've got to negotiate a peace with Nazi Germany. Now, if he did that, imagine the world we'd be living in today. So people have got to keep standing up, keep fighting, start talking out like we're doing here and trying to get a few more people to the cause. Because if we don't, and this is where people like where you are, and it would be a very tough argument for you in West Australia, people in West Australia, hey?
You can't make the argument.
Well, then they're silly because it's coming their way. What's happening in Melbourne and Sydney is coming the way of South Australia, West Australia, and Queensland if you don't stop it. What I find actually really amazing is fellow Australians can't see it. I tell you who can see it is the Yanks. A lot of the Americans are getting online now and saying, what is going on in Australia? Some of them are talking about flying over and trying to help us maintain our liberty. Now, there's a lot of one talking about how Australia's a convict island and it's reverting that. I'm not too sure about that. From your and my generation, I could never have imagined in the 70s and 80s any government trying what they're doing now. Whether the generations have slowly gone where everyone's got to get a medal for participating in sport, and we've had all these woke generations one after the other that softened us up, I'm not too sure. But the Americans love their liberty. They would fight and die for it. Australians don't seem to have that same fight at the moment, though last week in Melbourne was encouraging, So
there's a couple of things, though, Bob, about what's happened now. You recall a few weeks ago there was the whole the truckie strike thing, right?
Yep.
And I got on with Alexandra Marshall and did an interview with her, and I encouraged a few of my friends in the transport industry to do an interview with her, and there were all those TikTok truckies floating around.
Yeah,
we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and and I just basically said, well, I couldn't see anyone doing it because it's not 1979 anymore. Now, I've written about Razorback and I've written about protests and I've talked to people and I've run my podcast now for over a year. I talk to people every day. People send me emails and all the rest of it. I'm pretty much across what's going on in transport these days. Yeah. And I thought, well, no one knows any of these TikTok blokes. No one's got enough gravitas within the industry to pull this off. And anyone that I knew with any level of credibility in the industry didn't know any of these people. And I think this is not going to happen. And then shortly after that, I get a phone call from my mate, Tony Fulton. And he says, mate, he said, on Monday, which is a day before these people are going to go, he said, I'm going to park my truck on the highway on the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
And I said, mate, you've got a $300,000 truck. And you're telling me that you're going to park it on the highway. And he said, yep, me and Brock are going to do it. And Pauline Hanson and Malcolm Roberts are going to be there with us, and they're
Yep.
going to be Australian Federal Police and all that sort of stuff. And I said, mate, this is not 1979 anymore. If this goes badly, they will just hook your trucks up and skull
Tow
drag
'em
them
away.
off the road.
Yeah.
And he said, that's a risk I'm prepared to take.
Okay, good on him.
And well, I spent half an hour trying to talk him out of it.
Yeah.
Simply because I could see that what he was going to do was he was basically going to create a situation where he couldn't win. He was going to paint himself into a corner.
Yeah.
And as much as I respect what he was doing, and I said to him, if I was on the eastern states, I'd be there with him, and I would have been if I'd been there, simply because at least he had the intestinal fortitude to say in public, this is what I'm going to do, which he ultimately did, and then go ahead and do it and take the risk. And I've known Tony for a while, and you've got to respect. At least he had he talked the talk, and in the finish he walked the walk, and you have to respect that. But I can tell you now, Bob, that he's selling up and he's leaving the industry.
No, that's a pity.
Well, it's because because he feels that strongly about it. He won't take the vaccination across the border. Now we're coming up to some hard dates here.
100%. Yep.
These videos that I've shared, the last couple, one was a police officer in New South Wales who's resigned from the police force, so he can speak. Now I know a lot of police officers. My father was a police officer for 33 years.
Yeah.
I've got a feeling I might know how some of them think. There are police officers that I know who are currently serving, who really are disgusted by what's going on.
Yeah.
But they, like everyone else, have got a mortgage. They've got bills to pay. They've got kids to send to school. They're not in a position where they feel as though they can speak up or stop. So you've got to respect the guy, that highway patrol guy, who's resigned from the police force so he can speak out and say what he's got to say. And he's become a bit of a focal point. People are saying, you're just a coward and all that. He's not a coward. I respect that guy. He's brilliant because he has taken it upon himself to be the focal point that other members can talk to and get the word out there. He wrote a letter to Mick Fuller and said, what we're doing is wrong. And he's 100%, in my opinion, I'm no lawyer, he's 100% correct. Now, you've got all these other people, truck drivers, nurses, doctors, all these frontline workers in the healthcare industry who are now being told you must have a vaccination to work. Now, they're not being told that by the government. They're being told that by the organisations that they work for.
Yeah.
It's always been the case where if you worked in the healthcare system, you were expected to have a flu vaccine, you were expected to have, your MMR and your whooping cough and, all those sort of vaccinations, you're expected to have them in the healthcare system. And that's always been a known factor.
Yeah.
But it certainly wasn't in the police force, and certainly truck drivers have never been expected to have it. Now, in the last 18 months, 2 years, I have worked, the company I was working for before I came over here to Western Australia, I worked between Melbourne, Sydney, Newcastle, Western New South Wales, up as far as Townsville, Brisbane, Townsville, and Rockhampton in North Queensland, using facilities, meeting people every day, talking to people every day, doing what you were supposed to do at the various times of wearing a mask and things like that. But I never encountered anyone who had COVID. I never heard of anyone had COVID, and I still haven't, apart from third-hand stories, heard of anyone that's had it. Now, I am not saying COVID doesn't exist because I am damn sure that it does.
Yeah.
Okay? You'd be some sort of a clown if you didn't think that this stuff exists. But what I also believe is that politicians never let a good crisis go by.
No, they certainly haven't on this one.
And they certainly haven't. So we've got all this situation now. So you've got people like the Queensland Trucking Association, you've got Road Freight for New South Wales, you've got Transport for Victoria, buddy, South Australian Road Transport Association, all these people, Australian Trucking Association, they're all saying, have your jabs. Yeah. What's happened is that I know personally, I've got probably 15 emails in my inbox over the last few days, guys telling me they're not doing it and they want to talk about it on the show. Right?
Okay.
I have got a fella who got caught up in the vaccination thing, who had his vaccination, went to the roadhouse in Norseman, had a casual contact with a fella that tested positive, that 2 days later tested negative, and ended up
Yeah.
in lockdown in Perth because of a casual. And this bloke had his vaccinations, had all his shifts, he had all of his jabs, and he'd had nine tests in the previous 30 days negative, and he still got locked down. They are not.
It's insane.
They're not setting us free,
Nah.
And the reality of it is that we're in the situation where none of this bullshit makes sense. It doesn't make sense to the police on the ground.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to the people that are out there dealing with the public every day. There is a level of frustration that's getting higher and higher and higher. Your tradies have gone ahead and had a bit of a blue the other day. The police pepper sprayed an old lady.
Yeah.
Now that was disgusting. And then then there's a whole raft of people come around and said, "Oh no, that was a 34-year-old man wearing a wig."
Oh.
Then Rita Panahy posted the pictures.
Yeah.
We saw these other bloody fellas who I believe aren't cops, they're paid mercenaries, jump off that truck, run over and grab these two blokes with high vis on, smack the shit out of them. One of them got butt stroked with a rifle, for God's sake.
Actually, it wasn't the butt. What's actually more alarming about that, if you look at it closely, it was actually the gun barrel end. So if that actually had gone off while he was hitting him, the guy would be dead.
I don't know, but and then there's a video that I shared earlier on before we started. The coppers need some bloke in the head at petrol pumps
5 times. Well, what about that sling tackle? What about that sling tackle in Flinders Street Station, where they threw that? I mean, mate, you could put together, and people are doing it. There's a great video. You've probably seen it on. It's gone out in the last 40 hours about Scott Morrison talking about freedoms and what Australia stands for. And then in the background, they've got, as he's talking, they've got clips of all these row upon row of police walking down the streets. I mean, this is what I was going back to before. These scenes that we're seeing on our TV. I mean, when I grew up, the first thing that mum and dad, when we were kids, and you probably would have got the same thing, stranger danger. If a stranger comes near you, run and find a police officer. Find a copper. You were brought up to trust your police, and your police walked around not in riot gear. They had, like now it's like watching the old Nazis, the food sloggers, the boots, whatever you talk about, or the stormtroopers out of Star Wars. But back then they had the light blue shirt, the white cap. They weren't intimidating. Whereas now you see them coming toward you, you think, shit. Someone put up a photo. I don't know whether you saw that, where they tried to shut down protesters or supposedly protesters at Northcote Plaza. And there was row upon row of riot police coming. They didn't ask any questions. They came in with their shields and batons, and they just started laying into people. And all they were doing was having a cup of coffee. And they were telling him, move, you got to go home, you got to go home. But the car park was across the road, which started pushing them back into the shopping centre. This is North Korea stuff. It's not even... And people are looking at us from overseas. I mean, our politicians are talking about, we've got to bounce back the economy and all that. Good luck bouncing back our tourism industry for the next 20 years, because the damage we're doing to our reputation internationally right now is unbelievable. And for Morrison to be talking about freedoms or trying to lecture, China, for example, on about human rights. Well, if I was in China right now, I'd be saying to Scott Morrison, mate, look in your own backyard first. I mean, that's how bad we've become. And China would have a decent argument.
Well, we've got the situation over here now where McGowan hasn't actually fixed the hospital system over here.
Yeah, I've been reading that.
On the news the other night, they were talking about the ambulance contract, which I sort of pricked my ears up and had a bit of a listen to. Last month, we had 6,000 hours of ambulance ramping here in Western Australia. Now, there's uproar now because the ambulance service have got to be paid more because they've used up the 10,000 hours that they estimated for the whole year. It was 6,000 hours last month. So the ambulance service, they're talking about how we can't get people into hospital. COVID's overrun the hospital. Bullshit. What's overrun the hospital is mismanagement. I could run the hospital system here in Western Australia better, pissed. I'm telling you. I mean, Christ, you could just sit back with the dartboard and throw the money allocations at the dartboard and do a better job. I mean, my spaniel could just bark the instructions, I think. The reality of it is they've had 18 months to fix the problem and they've done nothing. All McGowan's done over here is close the borders and let the problem be somewhere else, the arm's length thing. Now we're talking about, you can't come to Western Australia now unless you've had a COVID jab. You can't come back to Western Australia. And it's like they're talking to naughty children,
Yeah.
You can't do this,
worse.
you can't do that. Now he's talking about he's got an excess budget surplus over here, and that's wonderful. I think it was $5 billion. I think it was. Yeah. Don't quote me, but I think it was somewhere around there.
No, you're right, pretty close. Yep.
We're going to spend a bit of money on roads and infrastructure and things like that. Fix the fucking hospitals, McLeon.
Hospital system. That's your most urgent. Because
hang on. Look, but there's more.
Okay, keep going.
Want more?
Yeah, absolutely. Bring the steak knives.
Now he's talking about people having to have vaccinations to work in the mining sector over here.
Yeah.
So if you're working in the Twiggy Forrest has already said at FMG, that's Fortescue Metals. If you don't have a vaccination, you're not welcome at Fortescue Metals Group, right? I
couldn't believe he did that.
No, well, he's done it. But here's the thing now. All this iron ore that we truck around all over the place, all these resources we're digging out of the ground, all this gas and all the rest of it, they start telling mine workers that they're going to have a vaccination or they can't play. I can tell you now, there are a few that will because they like the money and all the rest of it, but there are a few that just won't. It's the same with truck drivers crossing into Victoria. It's the same with truck drivers crossing into Queensland. There are a proportion that will because they live from pay to pay and they've got to pay the bills, but there are a proportion that won't. And the job's not getting any smaller.
Yeah.
The reality of it is that the job's not getting any smaller. People are being paid crap and they're being treated like crap. And
100%.
You're trying to wrap me up now, are you?
No. I've actually got. I just thought I'd let you know, mate. We've got a massive people watching. I think we need to do. That was expected because we didn't give many people notice. But we've got one of your mates here by the looks of it, Russo. I've just noticed. He's saying "G'day" and putting a few comments in. So I don't know. Do you know Russo? Old. His thing on Facebook is old mate.
Yeah.
So anyway, g'day, Russo. Good to have you making a few comments.
The fact is that you've recorded all this, and I'm going to put it on my feed later.
Absolutely.
The fact is, I didn't expect there to be a lot of people listening to it live. I don't normally do.
No, neither did I. This was a trial. I'm recording too, so Nate, I think we'll get a lot of people following once I put it up on the Twitter and do all that. Because I don't get on Facebook much. So, mate, go back to your points, what you're saying. I find that fascinating.
I've got two other things that I was going to say, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, three things. Two serious things. The first is that, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, there are 18,000 deaths in Australia every year attributed to medical error. Medical error. 18,000.
Mm.
We don't stop practice. Do we? 50,000 people are disabled every year by medical error. It's not my numbers. This is the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Go and look it up, people. Do your homework. 18,000 deaths, 50,000 people disabled. The website is www.ncbi.nlm.nih.gov.
Yeah.
There you go. So,
the whole thing, I mean, I just don't understand. I mean, you can look up all the stats, and I've done that. When this first came out, there was a really good video, the Great Barrington Declaration. And they had three of the world's leading infectious diseases experts, four of them that were on there. And I sat down, and you had to go through 2 hours, and they actually had a New York Times, New York Times is not particularly conservative, it's more left-leaning, journalist interview them. And they were warning then that lockdowns were a mistake, were a big mistake. And they were saying then that you needed to have a sensible strategy in place, like Sweden, where you develop herd immunity but protect the vulnerable. And that's what we should have done from day one. And would you have maybe slightly more deaths? Maybe, maybe not. We'll never know. But the whole thing, which I think, and you're hearing it again today, we had 2 weeks to flatten the curve to get our hospital system ready. We can't have it overwhelmed. Well, 2 years later, we're getting exactly the same message. We can't get it overwhelmed. And I'm thinking, well, maybe the health system is not the health system we keep getting acknowledged. Maybe the health system needs to get its shit together, because, every industry out there at different peak times has peak periods, and you've just got to deal with it. Yep. And, I mean, what sort of got up my goat all the way through this COVID thing, and even before the vaccines, is this system apparently was so overwhelmed that they had time to do these TikTok dance videos all the time. How many of those did you see?
Oh, well.
And they're dancing. I mean, just the perception of that. You shouldn't have done it, but they were stupid enough to have dance video after dance video. So they're rehearsing these things. They're doing these things. They're getting their staff out there. And I'm going, you guys can't be that overwhelmed. It just doesn't work that way. Again, World at War, they were showing London during the Blitz, and how their health professionals then were being overwhelmed. Now, that's an overwhelmed industry, but they had the old British bulldog attitude, head down, bum up. We'll get through this. You had no other choice, and we'll come out the other side. We just don't seem to have lost that attitude as a society here in Australia and possibly overseas. So, mate, I certainly hope we get it back, because if we don't, and here's the big problem, and it's probably the bigger question is how do we turn this around as a society? How do we? I'll give you a quick example, and maybe a subject we can finish off on. And this is where I think the rubber will hit the road a bit. So over in Israel, and I'm sure you followed Israel a little bit, so they got to 80% fully vaccinated. So their cases are going up. Now, so much for this. Isn't it interesting too? The more they vaccinate, the more higher the case rates go. So if this vaccine was such a good thing, why are the cases getting larger? But anyway, so over there, they're now into their 3rd booster. I read an article this morning, which I found fascinating, and we'll hit this just before Morrison goes to the polls next year, if at the same timeline, is in Israel now, because they're into their booster shots, out of the double jabbed, they've moved a whole bunch of people out of being vaccinated into unvaccinated. It's gone from 80% to 65%, because enough for the double jabbed haven't got their booster shot. So all these ones on their pedestals going around, here's my Band-Aid, I'm fully vaccinated. Well, good luck with that, because in 6 months' time, you're going to be joining us unhealthy lepers down here, and you're not going to be allowed into restaurants or whatever. I'm hoping at that point that everyone goes, no way, this is just unacceptable. The one light that we had, one light shining through, and sadly there was only one out of our elected politicians in the major parties, was that I can't say his name, the New South Wales Treasurer. This week he came out and said, I'm not going to, that's it, I'm not going to cop a 2-tiered society. He goes, when we get to 80%, we're opening up for everybody. But the problem is he sits on a cabinet table with Gladys Berejiklian, Hazard, and that police minister they got. They're insane. They're just nuts. And then you got that Chant woman who's the chief health officer. My goodness, mate. So,
mate,
I'll give you one last one.
You've opened up a whole can of worms. I'd go for another hour now, buddy. Yeah.
Well, keep going, mate. There's no restriction here. If you want to keep going, that's fine. I'll tell you, I'll give you a funny point. Is the one thing that is a positive out of this. These chief health officers, they've blown out of the water finally this thing about gender numbers. To get the equal amount of females and males. The 3 female chief health officers, the one in South Australia, duck if you see a football coming your way, for goodness sakes. Some of the stuff they've come out with and what they're talking, I think most Australians are going, you 3 are insane. They're just insane. And some of the restrictions that the one in Queensland, I can't remember her name, Janet Young, that's it. And she's going to be their governor, my goodness me, where she's keeping families from families at the most important times. So when someone's sick, someone's dying, when infants who haven't even been born yet need some medical procedure, No, our hospitals are for Queenslanders only. Go to South Australia, and that poor mum with twins lost one of her kids. Just, Australians were better than that. I still think Australians are better than that, but the fact is we seem to have divided up into 7 separate countries on this continent. Whatever happened to our Anzac spirit? There used to be a healthy interstate rivalry, but Australians would always back each other and would always have empathy for each other. I find it really distasteful that we seem to have lost that. And now I had one of my I won't say who they were, but I got in an argument. I might watch this. We got in an argument over it, and the question comes up, and I find this question unbelievable too. Have you had the jab? Well, it's none of your bloody business. That's my health choices. But I try to be polite, and to this person, I said, "Well, no, I haven't." And then I basically got attacked, and turn around from a person I never would have believed. She turned around and said, "Well, I hope you get COVID and die." I said, "Oh, thank you very much. I hope you walk in front of a truck and die." I mean, it's just, I make my health choices. You make yours. We all are responsible for our own lives. I wouldn't wish death upon anybody else. Well, I shouldn't quite say that. There's probably one or two I would, but it's just a sad way. There's one of my mates who's the best guy, and I'm still good friends. I can at least have a conversation with him, but he's fully on board with the way the police are treating everyone. And he's commented to me the other day, I wish they would go harder. I said, "What, live bullets?" He goes, "Yeah, that'd show them." I'm going, goodness me, we've lost it.
All I can say, mate, is back in the 80s, we wondered what it was going to be like in the future. I remember it. I was a young man, vital, traveling around all over the place, and I wondered what it was going to be. Christ, it's great. This is great now. The 80s.
Wasn't it the best decade?
What's the world going to be like in the future? I can tell you now, mate. I'd be fucking happy to be back there, back in the 80s.
100%. Mate, life was simple.
Just to close out, life was simple.
Yep.
Just to close out. Here's my prediction, mate.
Yeah,
we're coming up to the Christmas period. Righto?
Yep.
I reckon that we can look forward to the highly dangerous, highly deadly, highly communicable Christmas holiday strain of the virus. I reckon that's
they'll shut us down for Christmas.
Oh, mate, they're bound to. I mean, you've got Dan Andrews now saying he's going to roll out a bit of a test out in the country to test the vaccine passport out in the country. So even my prediction about, he's got the social credit score going, that's all going to be there. They started with 60%. They said 70%. They've said 80% for freedom. Now they're talking about, we'll still have some restrictions at 80%. It might even be 90% before we can let the unvaxxed out, Dominic Perrottet gets a vote because he said he won't cop the 2-tier society. Well done, Dominic. But you're there, mate. You're chained to all those other idiots. I'm afraid that'll be the end of you, mate. The reality of it is, Scott Morrison, here's my prediction, Bob. Save this, play it back. I reckon that Scott Morrison will sit and say nothing like the inconsequential, weak little pissant that he is. And if I could say this to you, Scott Morrison, to your face, buddy, you do not deserve to be the Prime Minister of this country, because
100%.
Your role in government is to provide us with choices, set the conditions for business to work and function successfully in this country, and protect people's rights. We are governed by the will of by the consent of the people. Mate, and I'll tell you what, I don't consent. I am fucking sorry I ever voted Liberal. And, there's a reason why I've been asked twice if I'd consider standing for Parliament, right?
Yep.
Standing for the Senate. Get my ass on one of those red leather chairs. And to be perfectly honest with you, well, no, I can't. I don't want to, because I've got the freedom to say what I like now. I love the Liberal Democrats. There's a lot I like about what they do, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's some things I don't like as well. I'm a true libertarian.
Yeah.
I believe that my rights shouldn't infringe on, I shouldn't be able to infringe on other people, and they shouldn't be able to infringe on me. You want to own 100%. A gun? You want to own a gun? Own one. I don't care. It doesn't matter, right? If you shoot someone, you'll pay the price.
Yeah.
Right? I don't care what you do. I don't look.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't infringe on anyone else's liberty or anyone else's rights, do what you like. I don't care. Some people call that anarchy. Right? I would call it freedom. I'm a true libertarian. You don't know what that means, listeners. Look it up. The
Classic
reality of
liberal.
classic liberal, small
Yeah.
government. This
Yeah.
government
Small
over
debt.
now, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Go away. Leave us alone. Get out of our lives.
But you know, the sad part to me, Mike, is that is to me just sheer common sense. You're 100% right. There's got to be laws and whatever. So where you cross a certain line, so if you rape someone or you injure someone or you kill someone, and isn't it amazing that our governments have now set up for big pharma, even doctors, there's no repercussion if any of your products now cause us harm.
Yep.
You know, so you can come into my life with the assistance of government, and I agree with you on what Andrews is doing. And these quarantine camps, mate, they worry me. They're not quarantine camps. They could force a medical procedure on you you don't want, and there's no recourse. I see that day coming if people don't start pushing back. But the sad part I'm seeing is there's so many people that seem quite content to be looked after by their big government. And not to say, you know, get out of my life. I'm hoping we're wrong on that, but it seems that people like you and me are a minority. And maybe, I don't know, I'm hoping we're wrong. But the other part, mate, is like, you're right.
I said, you've only got to look at what's been put up in science fiction movies. Right now, people say to me, "Oh, Mick, Jesus Christ, don't go there," you know. But here's the thing, right? I'm starting to sound like Alex Jones. But
no, that's fine. Love Alex Jones.
Not into the lizard men thing. But you think, look at what we've had. Just a few observations. There was a movie called Elysium, righto?
Yes.
And the police in it were robots. There were the peasants living in one place. They were doing all the scut work, all the deadly, dangerous stuff, and all the rest of it. All the people with all the money lived on the ring in the sky with all the good stuff and all the health care and all the rest of it. And mate, all he was trying to do was get health care for someone that needed it. And everyone was protecting their, what they saw theirs. And it was all being policed by robots. We've had RoboCop and all those other things, right? There was a video on the news a couple of weeks ago with that robot bouncing around all over the place. This is what they can do, and it's doing tumble turns. Did you see it?
Yeah, saw that. Yep.
You know, how much further does it take for that thing to be armed and out with a voice recognition system, which we have, enforcing the law? No heart, no compassion, black and white, judge, dread, judge, jury, and executioner. How far away are we? Now,
not far.
But there's more. The Matrix, people waking up and they're looking around. Like you said, there are people that like this situation just the way it is. Now, I'm not saying the world's the Matrix. I'm not saying that. Don't be stupid. What I am saying is that the parallels that you see from these things that were presented as entertainment are now coming true. We're seeing it across. A conspiracy theory 12 months ago was that there won't be a vaccine passport, and if you think that there is, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a nut job. Now in 2021, we're talking seriously about vaccine passports. Conspiracy theorists in the last 12 months have been overworked. They should be spoiler alerts.
Yeah.
What's going
on?
Well,
you there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll give you another film, mate. He's going back a bit further. Is Gattaca. Very similar. We had a two-tiered society of the elites and the unelites and who could do what. And that's a really good film because I think that's something that's certainly coming our way. And it's basically, I was listening to someone else on a similar talk show last night, and what they were saying, which I 100% agree with, is there's an undeclared war between the elites and the rest of us. And people haven't woken up to that yet. And I think that's very close to the mark at the moment. Is you certainly have a group of people that think they're higher than else. I mean, it is funny, like we talk about the 80s, and if you remember Ronald Reagan's wife, and the big message when we're growing up as kids in the 80s is don't do drugs. Or the big message to the kids these days, make sure you get your drugs or, you're not going to school. The whole thing is changed. But we're going into dystopia. We're already there. And I agree with you. Every time anybody comes out and they're intellectually lazy, mate, is when they come out with these labels of conspiracy theorists, anti-vaxxers, neo-Nazis. Now, I mean, I tell you, the biggest growing group in the world right now is right-wing nut jobs, neo-Nazis. My goodness, we include Hindus, Muslims, tradies, anyone who comes out against the government narrative is now a right-wing nut job. So, yeah, well, I give conspiracy theorists now some fair credit, but all those, every time you hear that label, and I don't care whether Alex Jones believes in a lizard, let him say what he believes. And if you think it's kind of silly, okay, it probably is, good. But that's your right to reject what he says or accept what he says. Let's stop labeling others and listen to people. I had a really good discussion the other day with a person. I reached out to them that was on the steps of the shrine on the protest. And you know, I can understand the arguments of some people who are uncomfortable with it being there. I was a bit myself. But my bigger issue is, why were those people there for? So you can be uncomfortable with the location. You don't have to be uncomfortable with the cause. You know, so, but those people have, I mean, Channel 9 came out and called them protesters a shame or something. Peter Hitchner now, I just can't stand that man. Oh, you there, mate?
Yeah, I'm here. We're just getting a bit of lag.
You still with us?
Yep.
Oh, sorry, I look like you dropped out. So, mate, it could be the internet gods telling us that wind up. Yeah. But, you know, you got any last thoughts, mate, before we do wind up?
I've got 3 facts for you.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
3.
Yep.
The clinical trials for Pfizer finish on the 27th of the 1st, 2023. The clinical trial for Moderna finishes in November 23, and the clinical trial for AstraZeneca finishes in February 2023. So even though these things are approved and we're using them under the emergency authorizations, and you know, I don't care what the FDA has said about how these things are, those clinical trials are still running, righto? People that say to me,
100%,
people say to me, I'm taking the vax, I've done my research. I say this to you. You are the research.
100%.
And that's pretty much where it is.
And that's not a conspiracy. And that's not a conspiracy theory. That's just legitimate fact. I actually have I coach at Melbourne Uni, so I'm going to be careful what I say there. But I've actually bounced a few of these theories because I want to be careful before I say something that what I'm saying has got some legitimacy. And I've bounced a few theories with people I know that are much more highly qualified for me, and none of them have come out and disputed the fact that we're still in a trial period. What they say, we've been researching these mRNA vaccines for 10 years before now. They're perfectly safe. And I said, but they still haven't gone through the normal process of what a normal vaccine would take. And they all concede that that's the case. So you can't argue that one. That's pretty clear, but it doesn't seem to matter. And listen, if these vaccines were so good, then why the indemnity to the big pharma companies? Why do they need it? Why can't they stand by their product?
We've followed the science before, Bob. There were things that have come out and been used before that were good. Thalidomide was pretty good for a while. Asbestos was great. You know, you should smoke Camels because that's the cigarette that most doctors smoke. And you know, another great one in Australia, cane toads. You know, they're just awesome. Those things, we'll get those in. That'll sort the bugs out in the sugar cane. No problem.
Yeah.
You know, follow the science. You know, Bob, just one final observation and then I've got to go.
Yeah, sure, mate.
The thing about it is we've allowed all this shit to happen because people will sit by idly and say nothing. Bad things happen because good people do nothing. And
exactly.
I am not saying to anyone, I just want to wrap up on this point. I am not saying to anyone that COVID doesn't exist. I'm not saying to anyone that vaccinations don't work. I'm not saying to anybody that there is one definitive piece of evidence which should steer your thinking. Go out and do a little bit of research. Like I said, go to the frequently asked questions section, have a look, and then go and work out what that actually means and what they're not telling you. All the information's out there, but no one draws the things together. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so upset with the mainstream media, because they're the ones that should be presenting the information to people so they can be informed. They should be telling people about the age stratification of coronavirus and who's dying from it and who's not. You know,
Yeah.
I could talk about that. I could talk about that alone for 15 minutes. I'm not going to now. I'm over it. But the fact of the matter is, Bob, that there's that much information out there. No one collects the information and tells people what they should know. They just expect people to go along, and the majority of people are, and that's why we're where we are today, because people just don't think.
No, great. Well, mate, hopefully if we can get enough people watching interviews like this, it might be up to us ordinary people to wake a few up and shake them up. Like I said before, you know, Winston Churchill, he didn't have a lot on him. He was a lone voice, and he woke a lot of people up. So I do think that is growing. I hope it grows even further. But let's see, mate, you are an absolute legend. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, even with only the Russo following us on here. So we'll get both these out on our platforms, and hopefully a few people will take the time to listen to what we've had to say. Great conversation, mate. Really appreciate it. No, like I said, I sort of dropped it on you. I thought I want to trial this because I've done it before, but I've never worked with the live one. So I thought, what better opportunity than when I've got the OzTrucker on, mate? So you're absolute legend.
I pointed it out to Rose. I said, we're going to be live. I said, this can't be good. Righto. Take care of yourself, mate.
We'll try again in the future, mate. We'll see how many we can get then.
Indeed. See ya.
All right. See you, mate.
Bye.
Okay, so there it is. Like I said, he's a larger-than-life character, Mike. I mentioned Rurik Shan before. We're just going to finish off today's vlog with a video he just produced. Again, go to his Facebook page. Again, I'll link that below. He's got a lot of terrific content, this fella. He's getting a lot of international attention. And how sad it is that Australia now is being known internationally. Today, I saw a video of 4 Polish politicians saying we now no longer deserve to be amongst the membership of liberal Western democracies. We've forfeited our right, and they quite rightly have a dig at Scott Morrison, who has digs at other countries about, you know, their restraints on freedoms and liberties. Australia at the moment, our politicians and our governments have no right to be lecturing other countries for imposing restrictions or cracking down on the liberties of their citizens after their performance of the last 2 years. Like I said, look forward to chatting to you on the next episode. Have fun, stay safe, keep fighting, hold that line. See you guys.